Hi, this channel focuses on giving clear and easy to understand explanations on Star Wars concepts. If you have questions after watching, please allow me to answer them. In the Star Wars Resistance episode, The New World and No Place is Safe, the Colossus and crew find a new planet, called Eos Prime, to settle on, but soon find that it's occupied by fish-like beings called Aoceans that are very handy with tridents. Kaz and Griff are captured by the Aoceans and are freed after Kaz heals one of the Aoceans. The Aocean Queen makes peace with the Colossus after receiving supplies to heal her wounded. Kaz tries to rejoin the Resistance in Norath Kel, but Kaz encounters a First Order probe and narrowly escapes in a battered fireball. Kaz warns Doza of the First Order, and Pyre's Resurgent-class Star Destroyer arrives over Eos out of hyperspace. The First Order bombers are sent to disable the Colossus, but the Aces and the Aoceans, working together, are able to overcome the assault of the Colossus. Kaz makes a risky attack on the Star Destroyer and is almost successful in destroying the bridge, but Tam narrowly stops the bridge's destruction. For her valor in battle, Tam is promoted to Squadron Commander. Alright, so the first kind of interesting thing in this episode, at least in the New World, is that the B-1 and several B-2 battle droids were destroyed. And we don't know exactly if B-1 is destroyed beyond repair, except that B-1 is deactivated and could possibly be salvaged by Niku. So possibly we could see B-1 again, but most of the B-2s were destroyed, if not all of them, so it could very well be the end of the B-1s and B-2 battle droids in Star Wars Resistance. So, number 2, Kaz knew about Tam almost killing him in a dogfight. Kaz shouldn't have known this, as he didn't see her. This might be a writing fluke. Generally in literature, this is called tragic or dramatic irony, where the audience knows something, but the character is not really clued into why. Mainly that the character is not clued into how or what the bigger picture is. Kaz might be force sensitive and possibly is skilled enough to call on the force, but it's more likely that the writing was just cut, and so it's more likely that the dialogue was cut and that the kind of situation as to how Kaz knew about Tam almost killing him, it seems more ambiguous because dialogue that would have explained it better was cut to make the episode fit into the time slot. All right, number 3. So Griff. We learn more about Griff and his history with the Empire. Griff says pretty much that Doza was his commanding officer and that Griff had no problems defecting from the Empire since the cause was no longer worth fighting for. And with Doza's prompting, Griff easily left and became an ace. So, fourth, we have the First Order TIE bombers, and this is their first on-screen appearance. It's not their first appearance ever, but it's their second appearance after the first mention and first appearance in the Allegiance #1 comic. The First Order bombers were used on Ta Nuna, and the First Order TIE bombers were designed by Amy Beth Christensen specifically for this episode, although they were used in the Allegiance #1 comic before this episode. All right, number 5. So Tam was promoted to 2nd Squadron Commander, and possibly there will be orders that challenge Tam's convictions in the future. Tam may move to defect from the First Order. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, but it's likely that Tam will return to the Colossus. Usually there's some sort of conflict resolution, but the thing is that Yeager sided against Tam. He's pretty crotchety old dude, and he seems pretty hell-bent on not really approving what Tam has done joining the First Order. Yeager actually states that Tam has made up her mind. So, if Tam returns, it probably won't be with Yeager's help. Yeager may forgive her and try his best to welcome her back in due time, but Kaz will probably be the advocate for her in the upcoming episodes. Kaz will most likely be instrumental in Tam's rescue in the upcoming episode. Um, and what I'm talking about is the escape, which is in two parts, not the immediately following episode. Top 5 things to know before watching Rebuilding the Resistance. So, what to expect? Number 1, Veneza Doza will need help from the Aces on the Colossus. So, the Resistance recruits will need help getting off Dantooine. Um, it's likely that we'll see more of the shape of the Resistance and how they get recruits. We'll learn more about the recruits and more of the army specifications of the Resistance from this episode, but mainly I think it'll focus on how the Aces are helping the Resistance, and possibly after the show ends, or after the planned show ends, how the Aces might continue to help the Resistance, or how they might continue to aid the Resistance even if they're not actively in the fight with the First Order. So, Tam will have orders from the First Order to stop the Resistance and crush the Aces. But Tam might make her mind up about her place in the First Order, sort of in this section of Rebuilding the Resistance. So, number 2, Rebuilding the Resistance will hopefully be the much needed change of pace for Star Wars Resistance. I mean, a lot of people kind of have noticed that the second season has really sped up from season 1, but a lot of the tension that was building in season 1 just is kind of evaporated and dissipated. It kind of went nowhere. A lot of the story writing isn't bad, it's just that it's mainly geared towards children and not really to people that are familiar with any sort of literature or writing more generally. The tension, the gravitas of the show isn't as robust as it was in Rebels and as it was in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and so hopefully this upcoming episode should benefit from featuring the Resistance fighters more prominently than the Colossus. Episodes with only the Colossus, merely the Colossus episodes, they're not nearly as important, they're not nearly as interesting, and they seem almost like filler episodes, and so hopefully this will be a nice change of pace. So number 3, only 3 episodes remain in the Resistance show, at least that are planned. So the next 3 episodes, everything that'll be closing out in this show should happen. That doesn't mean the characters will go away or a whole bunch of them will die, but it does mean that in the scope of this show, those characters will kind of close out. So we'll probably see them again mentioned in movies or something like that, but it's more likely they'll be mentioned in TV and they'll be probably utilized in comics going forward. And one thing I just wanted to know about is if you're watching this and you're thinking about the Resistance show and maybe you have some doubts about it, if you think the Resistance story should continue, would you think that Disney Plus would be a better place for the show to air? Just post in the comments what you think. Okay, so number 4. Who does Commander Pyre fear the most? At the end of No Place is Safe, his admission of fearing not Hux, but someone else, kind of implies that someone above him is causing him some anxiety or fear, and he has to answer directly to them. So that kind of begs the question, who is that person, and what exactly does he have to answer for? What are the consequences for his repeated failure? So the first that comes to mind is like Kylo Ren. I mean, he's the supreme leader of the First Order during this time period before the Rise of Skywalker, and leading right up to the Rise of Skywalker. Kylo Ren obviously has some anger problems, so he could potentially kill junior officers and things like that, but Commander Pyre wouldn't likely be subjected to just an outright execution, although he's not been seen in The Rise of Skywalker or beyond that point, so it's very likely that Commander Pyre could die before those events, so possibly Kylo Ren could be instrumental in his death, but that's complete conjecture and unknown at this point. Another possibility for Commander Pyre's fear is a Legion General, Enric Pride. Brief spoiler for the Rise of Resistance, or the Rise of Skywalker, sorry, is that Enric Pride is kind of like the commanding officer of the entire Sith fleet. So when Palpatine tries to resurrect all of his Empire era ships, he puts Enric Pride in charge. He gets a new title called the Allegiant General, which basically means that he's in charge of all the forces, and he directly answers to Palpatine, sort of like Darth Vader would have done at one point, or what uh, Tarkin would have done. He's occupying a sort of new space in the post-Empire universe, but he seems to answer directly to Palpatine, which brings me to my last point. It's possible that Palpatine himself uh, is what Commander Pyre fears. I think this is the least likely opportunity. Um, I think seeing Palpatine in the series would be completely uncalled for, and if they do that, it would just be kind of out of character and off color for the show. It'd be very strange. Um, I think it's also unlikely that Commander Pyre knows about Palpatine, but it is a vague possibility. All right, so number 5, how will Tam flee the First Order? So Tam will definitely reconcile with the Colossus. It's just a matter of how that will happen. So I think the most likely opportunity is for Tam to come back to the Colossus with Kaz. I think Kaz will rescue her. Kaz is really kind of like a crusader and tries to help all sorts of people. I think Yeager will eventually come to terms with her, and uh, maybe he'll kind of relate to her in a different way and try and get along with her better. But the thing is that he's pretty closed off to her after she joined the First Order, so that seems unlikely. It's just that uh, Yeager and Tam will likely reconcile at some point. It's just who knows if it'll be during the show. So, I mean, some other unanswered questions are since Tam is such a good mechanic, will she repair the fireball? The fireball is seen in the Battle of Exegol, so it's kind of unknown who's in the fireball and who will be repairing the fireball, and also uh, just how it happens that the fireball gets to the Rise of Skywalker. So, if you have any questions, leave them below. If I left any questions unanswered, go ahead and leave them down below. Thanks for watching, and stay fantastic.